Hello and welcome to Field Talk. As always, I'm your host, Craig Sheffield. And in this episode, our guest is Shaun Flynn, a talented sound designer and audio engineer, joining us to share his inspiring journey and valuable insights into the world of audio production. We'll take an in-depth look into Shaun's experiences from facing career struggles to finding his true passion and excelling in the industry. Shaun's journey is a testament to perseverance and finding one's true calling. We'll explore his transition from teaching to voiceover work and ultimately pursuing formal education in audio production. Along the way, we'll touch on the challenges he faced, the importance of receiving and interpreting critiques, and the impact of his education on his career. Additionally, we'll uncover Shaun's creative process for crafting captivating audio fiction stories, the development of his audio drama series Battlefield Lost, and the valuable lessons he gained from utilizing freelancing platforms like Upwork. Most importantly, Shaun will share his insights on finding a work-life balance, pursuing one's passions, and navigating the ever-changing landscape of the audio industry. So get ready for a captivating dive into the art of sound design, audio storytelling, and the resilience needed to pursue one's dreams. Let's jump right in and get creative. How the hell have you been?
Yeah, things have been good. Living here in London now, it's very busy. A lot of things are going on and things have been good.
Yeah, I know we first met, we had coffee here in Taiwan, and then I learned that you were going to move off to London with, I guess, then your girlfriend, now your fiance. Can you tell me about that, that journey, that progression? Like you came into Taiwan, I guess, teaching or doing something, and then what kind of spurred you to start doing all of this audio production work?
Yeah, so last time that we saw each other, we were both in Kaohsiung, right? So we lived in the same city in Taiwan. At that point, I was English teaching. I had taught English for, about 6 or 7 years in a few different countries in Thailand, Hong Kong, mainland China, and then Taiwan, where I was living with my girlfriend at the time, now fiance. And it was good. And, teaching English was really fun. It was really great experience to be able to live and travel abroad, to kind of go where you want to go and be able to stay there and work and, live that sort of English teacher traveling sort of lifestyle, which was great. But at a certain point during that whole journey, I kind of knew that I didn't want to be a teacher forever. You know what I mean? I sort of knew that wasn't really my passion. It was really great for the time. It was really wonderful to have those experiences. But at a certain point, I kind of knew that I wanted to do something else and I wasn't sure what that was. So when I was sort of exploring different options of things to do in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung, that's when I started with the voiceover work. So I started going on freelancer websites like Upwork and Fiverr and just trying to get whatever voiceover jobs I could just to see. Because at the time, I didn't even know that was an option. The idea that you could record voice from home and earn money or make a living that way was totally foreign to me. So when I discovered that option, I thought, oh, okay, this is cool. Let me try this. And then I really liked it. And from there, I just tried to develop more skills in audio beyond just speaking and narrating and recording voice to try and build skills in that way. So it was from that experience that I decided, okay, well, if I want to have a career change later on in life. And at this point, I'm coming up on about 30 years old, so having a career change at that sort of age is a little bit tougher because you kind of, ideally, if you want to go far in a profession, you would have kind of started earlier, maybe in your 20s or something. So I thought, okay, well, I need to do something here. And then I thought maybe I'll go to school for this, but then I have to sort of make the case for myself that I would be a good audio production student. So when I was applying to schools in London, where my fiance is from, because we were thinking about moving back to be closer to family. I sort of made the case for myself because I had no audio background. Everything that I knew was self-taught. I had to make the case in my application to be like, hey, look, this is what I've done on my own. I've been able to sort of make a little bit of a profession for myself, acquire clients, make income, and sort of learn this stuff. I learned it on my own. And then this is why, this is how I'm showing that I'd be motivated to learning more. So through those efforts, I was able to get a spot in the MA audio production program at University of Westminster. And yeah, and then I came to London in 2022 to do that program, that 1 year program. And I'm glad I did. I did it in 2022 because actually when I got the acceptance letter to go to be in the program, it was meant for 2020. But obviously with COVID, that changed the program quite a bit. Everything all around, schools and, for undergrad and all these different programs, everything was online at the time, right? Because they didn't want people in person and all these kind of things. So I deferred for 2 years because I knew that if I was going to go in there and it was going to be all online, it would be pretty pointless anyway. Because the whole point is you want to get into the studios, you want to work with the expensive equipment, and you want to be able to see your lecturers in person, people who have had lots of, lots of experiences that have had like really celebrated careers and stuff. You want to be able to talk to them, pick their brains, get them as a connection, get their connection network and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I put it off for 2 years and I'm very glad that I did, because when I did go in 2022, I had like full access to all the studios and everything, got to go to the, in-person lectures. And it was just, yeah, it was a really, really great experience. So I'm really, really glad I was able to do that. And finished that at the end of 2023. And I've been in London ever since.
Nice. Yeah, man. Well, that's a lot to kind of unpack. I realize, you covered some, you traveled around before you even came to Taiwan, and you're in various places. I was wondering if you could just help us, help me, but everyone that's listening understand your background before you even, you were starting teaching. Did you have like a direction or something that you might have had a previous passion about?
No, I think when I went to university and when I went to college in the States, I studied professional communications because I just sort of thought that, it's a very broad major, it's the kind of thing that you can kind of get into anything. And the truth of the matter is that I didn't have a direction back then, I didn't think to myself, oh, I want to get into journalism or media or this or that. I just sort of thought, oh, I'll just do this thing and then something will pop up. But it just, a clear path never really presented itself because I didn't have an idea of it, So when I was studying in my undergrad, I did a lot of like public speaking sort of stuff. I did a lot of things that, were, good life skills and things like that, but nothing really for the professional world because I wasn't proactive enough to go out there and make those experiences for myself. So when I finished university and I didn't have a direct career path, I didn't have job prospects and things like that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to work a little bit. I worked in a restaurant, saved money, and decided that I wanted to go travel. So I traveled around like Southeast Asia with a buddy. I had another friend that was traveling all the way up. He traveled all the way from Moscow to Bangkok at that time, and we all met up down there. And just to get out and just have some experiences and stuff. And then while I was out there, I met a lot of English teachers, a lot of foreigners from the States and from Canada and Europe or wherever that were just living and teaching. And I didn't know that was even a job option. And I met a lot of those people. A lot of them seemed very nice. People like you and everybody else all over the place, in Thailand and these other countries. And yeah, they seem to have a very nice, like comfortable lifestyle. And I thought that was cool because I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know you could just be an English teacher in another country. So that interested me. And then when I went home, when I ended my travels, I got certified. I did a course to do my TEFL certificate. And then that's through the job board from that certification, I got my first job teaching in Hong Kong. So then that's what started the whole sort of English teaching journey. And it was never really a case of that, I wanted to be a teacher or I wanted to do this, that, and the other. I just wanted to travel and live abroad. And I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed working with kids. It was a lot of fun. It's a lively job, as you know what I mean? You need energy to keep up with the kids. And at that time, I had the energy for it, so I was happy to, sing songs and dance and play with like 5-year-olds and then, get into history lessons with teenagers and stuff. And it was a lot of fun for the time. But then at a certain point, I sort of knew that this wasn't really the kind of thing that really sparked my passionate interest or my creative interest. It was just kind of allowing me to travel and all these sort of things. And and for that, I was very thankful for it. I'm glad I did all the traveling I did. I'm glad I had the experiences I did. I wouldn't have met my lovely fiance if I didn't, it was great. But yeah, at a certain point, I knew that I wanted to make a professional change. And then that's what got me involved in audio. So yeah, so through that, that's how I, got to where I am now.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, just to put a ribbon on those things we were just discussing and going over. I love how what you're telling me seemed very organic in the sense that, like you had these communication skills already. So you had this kind of foundational ability to communicate effectively. You literally studied this stuff. And then, you applied that, and just by chance, you met some people that showed you this work opportunity, and you said, "Wow, that's a cool way. You could actually apply your communication skills this way." And then you went about that. But then, as most people will find, you do something for a little while, and then maybe it's not quite your thing. You need to find a new spark. And so, the audio stuff kind of came into your purview. And I guess to dig into that just a little bit more, was there like a certain person that you saw that was doing like audio work that really got you honed in into that area? Or is it just something that came about kind of by chance, like some of these other things?
Well, it came about by chance because, from talking to a friend in Kaohsiung at the time, I had only been there for maybe, because when I was living there, I lived there for about 4.5 years. So about 1 year into it, I was talking to a friend and expressing to him that, I like teaching. This is fun, but it's not the kind of thing I want to do forever. I'm looking for alternate paths. And then he showed me Upwork and all these freelancer websites. And he was just showing me job postings for voiceover artists. And you see the job postings and it would be like, $200 for this one, 500, or, 50 here, 20 there, 500 here, 2,000, I'm seeing all these things. And I'm like, I had the realization like, oh, wow, there's, you can, actually work in this. I didn't think that was an option. So that interested me. It wasn't like I saw somebody else doing it and thought I want to be like them. I just saw the option and thought, oh, that's cool. And then I did some research and, with the power of the internet, there's always somebody out there who's, got a YouTube channel or a podcast where they're sharing their experiences and stuff. So I saw some YouTube channels of voiceover people kind of explaining, how they get clients, how to go about it. You got to run yourself like a business. They're kind of showing their financials and things. And from seeing these other people just in small doses, it became quite clear that it's like, oh, okay, this could be, I don't know, a good profession and stuff. So yeah, it was just kind of more by chance than anything. But it is interesting though, because when I was in my undergrad and I was studying professional communications, even though it was sort of stuff that I wasn't using at the time or that had a direct career path for me, I was doing like a lot of public speaking, a lot of like presenting and all these kind of things. I liked talking in a like public speaking sort of setting, talking in like large group, small group. I don't know. That's just something that I've kind of always enjoyed or had, been comfortable with. And it is just funny because even though I didn't really have any professional direction, after all this time, it's kind of like come full circle. And now that I'm doing voiceover and all that sort of stuff again, I'm speaking still now, you know what I mean, as a job. So it's, inadvertently, it kind of all came back to that.
Yeah. I just think that's brilliant how some things work out that way. And the fact that you didn't try to plan these steps of your life. It wasn't as if you had like an ABC, here's how I'm going to do it. But it came about just the same. I guess just goes to show you things just work out how they're supposed to work out. But let's talk about just for a second, your experiences with Upwork. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have seen these platforms, possibly they've used these platforms, and then another portion of people that have actually tried to work on these platforms. And I know it's a mixed bag depends on who you talk to about their experience with it. I tend to hear people more complain about it than actually praise it. But I do know people that definitely make a living and do pretty well. They have a system worked out and they have enough clients to meet their needs. But just, what were your experiences working with things like Upwork or Fiverr, not to name drop, but, these online platforms?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, my experience has been good for the most part. I totally understand the frustration that people feel because the the market is it's totally dictated by, what's available. Now with AI voice and things like that, a lot of entry level clients or people that are looking to pay entry level, say voiceovers or whoever's jobs can be, easily replicated by AI, they're offering way low money now. So, I understand the frustration of people who have to feel like they work a lot for not as much. And then the platform takes like 10% or 20% or whatever it is. So there's a lot of downsides to it. But I would say that if you're just starting out in something, if you're trying to get started in something that you don't have any experience in or prior experience in, industry level or in a professional capacity, you're just really just on your own, just trying it as an amateur, it's a really good jumping off point because it will give you the opportunities to get some hands-on experience, even if it's very low pay or no pay at all or anything. If you're truly interested, just give it a shot and see what you think, not for money's sake, but just for the experience. Because what I found was, in the beginning, I did a bunch of jobs that were just very, very low pay, the kind of things that I guess to the eyes of a third party would be a waste of time. But for me, it was just sort of good because it helped me sort of build up my profile and just sort of begin the series of stepping stones to get to, more lucrative career out of it, So yeah, no, my experience has been good. I think it's good. It's a good way for meeting clients and all of the frustrations people have about it, where they think that, they're being cheated out of money because the market is potentially bad or because the platforms need to take their cut and things like that. You kind of just have to start somewhere. So I would advise that if you're just starting out, go for it because it's a good experience and it will help you build your portfolio, your client list, all these sort of things. And even though, I started it back in like 2017, 2018, I still use it now, even though I have clients just that I know personally that I don't need a platform for. I still use it to meet new clients and, still make just money off of the platform itself. So it's a good thing. There's ups and downs to all of it. But I think for people starting out, it's nice that it just gives you the option. Because if you think about people before, say, the internet era or the digital era, if you wanted to be, I don't know, like a voiceover or some music producer or anything, any kind of thing that you can do from home now, you just wouldn't have the option because it's like, oh, who do you know that has a studio? Who do you know you don't know people that are trying to pay for voice work and stuff. I feel like these industries were very exclusive, whereas now with things like this, it can be way more inclusive, but you got to pay your dues to get in. So, that's just part of it.
Yeah, paying your dues. I mean, you always got to learn. There's a huge learning curve to just about anything. And like you said, just starting is really that first step that a lot of people will make excuses, why they didn't get this or that.
Yeah.
And that might be the money part why they never start, or maybe the competitive aspect to it and, the market, whatever it might be. But, keep plugging away at it, talk about this a little bit more because I've used the platform a little bit. I haven't had much success with it, but I don't think I've been terribly consistent with it. Do you have some tips or any ways that you feel are best to use platforms like Upwork, or maybe just how do you use Upwork and what do you would suggest for somebody else who's just getting started?
Well, you mentioned, with your experience with it, you said, it hasn't been terribly successful, but it's because you hasn't really been super consistent with it. And I would say that, the consistency is definitely a huge factor in that because at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter how good you are at something. If people don't understand that you're any good at it, or if they don't understand you do something, or if they don't understand that you exist at all, then people aren't going to come to you asking for a service or, help with whatever it is that you're trying to make a career out of because, they just need to know that you're active, So I think for me, the reason why Upwork continues to be helpful for me, even at this stage in my career, is that from the beginning, I was just going out for anything that I could. And I did a lot of free stuff. I did a lot of underpaid things. And I did it basically for reviews so that I could build up the Upwork profile, So if you go on my Upwork profile, you can see it's me. It's like, whatever, 5 stars, 4.9 something out of however many reviews. They show you the amount of money you've earned there. And if you've earned, whatever thousands of dollars, then new people come along and see that. And then they can just kind of tell, oh, you're a real person. Other people know you're a real person and you can do what you're doing. So the consistency is what allowed me to build up the profile. And that when I meet new people now, that they can, just sort of trust me, or they'd be willing to put me on a job because they just want the trustworthiness factor from other people. And it's the same thing. Like if you're working off platform, so say you're not doing it on one of these freelancing platforms and you're just doing it on your own. Say you just have a website for your music production, voiceover, anything, whatever it is. If you're a writer even, you need like a reviews page. You need something to show new people, hey, look at all these other people that say that they're happy with what I've done. People need to trust other people's testimony to know that, you're worth working with, or you're worth spending their time and their money on. And, if you are good at what you do and you're active and you're consistent, the people will show up. People do express interest. It just takes time. These kind of things don't really happen overnight. So it's tough. And sometimes it's like, it's defeating and it's soul crushing when you're putting in a lot of efforts and nothing really truly good has come from it. Or, you know what I mean? Your wildest dreams don't exactly happen overnight, but you will notice, I guarantee you, no matter what it is you do, like anything, I don't care if it's like, if you're a freelancer from home, or you're like, you have a labor job or whatever, if you just put in the efforts consistently, you will see progress and, new opportunities come your way.
Yeah, man. I think everybody needs to hear that like again and again and again, right? Because you're right. It just gets kind of like you could be soul crushing at some points. I think everybody's probably been there. If you've sustained some pursuit for a while, you know that it gets hard. So yeah, don't give up. Keep putting in the work. Let's switch over and talk a little bit more about, your lessons learned and takeaways and maybe your review of your experiences with your education program. Maybe you can tell us some of the key lessons or skills you gained during your time at the MA audio production program.
Yeah, I mean, the program was like everything for me, So in preparation of the program, I was supposed to go in 2020, as I said before, and that I deferred for a couple years. So in those 2 years, I thought to myself, well, I can probably better prepare myself. I didn't want to do the program online because I felt like I could learn everything online anyway. So in those 2 years, I just did a lot of online learning and practicing things. And so in preparation, because the program itself is really broad. So the MA audio production program at University of Westminster is really broad. It's not focused on like music or film or anything in particular. It's kind of all of the things. So the way the program worked was that, so we had three semesters or 3 trimesters, as you will, and the only things we were graded on in each one was just the projects themselves. So there was no homework, there was written work, but you know what I mean? It wasn't a big part of the grade or anything. The grades had completely to do with submissions. So in the first semester, you would have, say, 6 or 7 big projects to do. And that was like 100% of your grade. So in the beginning, it was like sound design for animation, a live recording assessment, sound for video games, radio production things. So they were all different sort of things. So in preparation for that, I thought, well, look, all I know how to do is record my voice. I should learn other kind of skills. So I started going out for these other sort of audio jobs on Upwork. But just like with the voice thing, people don't want to hire you if they don't know you as a sound designer, if you don't have experience in this, that, or whatever else. So you're either going to have to start from the beginning again and do everything, or do a bunch of stuff for free or extremely underpaid, and then work your way up. And I didn't want to I didn't have the energy for that because I had just done it for voice. So then that's kind of how I came up with the idea of my podcast for sound fiction, because I thought, well, instead of, if I'm going to do this stuff for free anyway, why do I want to do it for someone else's projects when I can just do it for my own? So I like storytelling, I love movies and all these sort of, storytelling type media. I can write my own fiction stories, voice them myself, or voice, other people who want to get involved, put the voices together, do the sound design, ambiences, the sound design sequences, all this stuff, mix music into it and all these kind of things. And then I can just make my own story. And this will kind of be my sort of like my portfolio, So then that's when I started that in preparation for school. So for about a year or a year and a half leading up to school, I was making these you can listen to them now. Listen to some of the oldest, episode 1, episode 2 of sound fiction on my podcast. The earliest productions are like, the very amateur, very coming from someone who's like, I don't really know anything about this. I just trying to do it just to do it. But it helped me out a lot because then when I entered my program, I felt way more like, okay, I get that everything in audio is sort of connected. So whether you're a musician or you're a singer or you're a sound designer for video games or whatever, they all kind of like intermesh one way or another. So going into the program, it was really great because each project and each assessment was just sort of like a new, a fun kind of new, just new experience that I could just have fun with. So it was really great. So getting in there, being in those studios with like really awesome equipment, like, all kinds of fun stuff that I'm not allowed to play with anymore because I'm out of the program. It was really, really fun. And the lecturers are really, really great. Main ones were Mate Dimlik, who was the head of the course for 25 years. He retired at the end of my year last year. Simon Gogerly, who worked on some really great things. He won some Grammys for mixing three songs on U2's album, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, with countless others. Worked with like, Gwen Stefani, Tears for Fears, like all kinds of, really, really, really prestigious career. There are ones like Paul Bond, rocker guy, very, very cool, done all kinds of crazy, fun stuff. So being able to be around those people and ask them, how would you go about this? How would you go about that? And getting their thoughts on it. But then also seeing at the same time, if it's something that they're not familiar with, if they're musicians or something and you're asking them, oh, well, how should I do, what would you do if you were me working on, sound for this video game or whatever it is? They're also like, they have a really childlike sense of, wonder too about it. So you kind of think about these people like, oh yeah, you're like this like, way high accomplished person that knows infinitely more than me. But then you get into a different audio situation with them and they're kind of like, oh yeah, that is weird. Hey, I don't know. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Everybody's actually all quite human in one sense or another. So yeah, the program was just awesome for me because it was very, very broad. I got to pick up many, many different skills and try lots of different things. And most importantly, allowed me to kind of like learn more about myself as an audio producer and explore my interests in it. And that was, the program was excellent for that.
Cool, man. That's, I think the thing that spoke to me, at least whatever all the things that you just said, was always listening to somebody who is an expert and watching them fail at something or watching them like struggle on some problem, like it really takes them off of that pedestal and like makes you think, wait, this is just a real person and they're not any different than I am. Granted, they have far different experiences than I have, but like we're all in this kind of together. And, this guy certainly has more experiences and would approach things a different way to get the solution or whatever. But, we're still just all curious and trying to make something happen or change something in a certain way. And we may not know how to do it, even the experts. So I think that's nice that you got that experience.
And it was great too, because and that's the whole thing about sort of being in a creative industry is that like you can't really step into any situation, no matter how decorated your past experiences. You kind of can't come into anything sort of being like, oh, well, I understand how everything works. I know best. You have to, it doesn't matter where you are in your career or your life or whatever you're working on or what you've accomplished. You do have to approach everything like, you know what I mean? I'm just another person with a perspective. And if you are good at what you do and you have a creative mind about it, then you will be able to produce something good. But it was just very, very nice to be around accomplished people who were also, down to start on square one with you. So it was very, very interesting.
Let me just, throw one out there for you. are there any, was there any like story or experience, while you were at the school, while you're in the program that stood out to you that like, made a lasting impression?
Yeah, I mean, I think the program, the way it was structured, with everything being dependent on the assessments on each project, was really, really great experience, because it kind of is really a trial by fire situation. You really get thrown into the deep end, because the way they were structured was that, like, so for each trimester, right, you would have the first 6 weeks would be like totally free. You'd have, the date of each assessment, each project marked down. But basically, the first 6 weeks was pretty much free for you to work on whatever, plan whatever you need to plan. And then when the first assessment starts, the next one is the next week. And then the next one is the next week. And the next one is the next week. And then you get into this really like rapid fire kind of thing where, you're working on what's due directly after the weekend, but then at the same time, you have to take into account what's coming after that. And then maybe there's another one like 2 or 3 weeks down the line that you need extra time on. Because for me, myself, I'm not a musician. So the live recording one was really difficult, because I had to find a band, you know what I mean? I had to bring them in the studio, figure out how to mic everything up and stuff like that. So it was a really great experience, because you get to just really, get thrown in the deep end, and they left it up to you too. There was for all of these assessments where it's not really about you just doing what you do. Say for like the live recording, you'd have to find a band, or if for the radio drama production one, you'd have to find actors. And then it wasn't just like, okay, here, pick from these actors, pick from these scripts or whatever. It was just like, no, you go out and do it. You go out and find the people, and you better do it quickly, because it's due in 3 weeks and the studios are all booked up for the next 2 weeks. And, so you really have to manage yourself. And it was good, because that's what the industry is like too. If you have a project that needs to get done, say someone's coming to you and they're saying, okay, look, we need this project done. This is the budget. They're giving you all this money. They're not going to hold your hand through it. You need to do it all yourself. If you don't have a studio to work in, you got to go find one. You know what I mean? If you don't have actors, you got to go find them. Or if you don't have music production for it, you got to go find a producer. So it was really good. But I think it was really great too, because through the assessments, we get critiqued on them very, very harshly by our lecturers. And so the main guy, Mate, he was a very tell it like it is kind of guy. He's from former Yugoslavia, and he's, no frills, really, really nice guy, really sweet dude. But when it came to, pointing out flaws in your work, he was like not afraid whatsoever. So I think one of the, you asked like what experience sticks out in my head. This was like one of the very first assessments we had, and it was sound for animation. So basically 2 weeks before the assessment was due, he posted on the website, on the school, module, okay, this is the animation you have. And I think it was like a 3 or 4 minute animation, and it just has no sound. So you have to put in all the sounds for it, So he put in this really dark animation of like, I don't know, this girl, it's like she walks into a mirror, and then, she goes into this animated kind of weird dark shadow world and stuff. And it all has to do with like childhood trauma and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, it's just no sound. He's like, you have to do all the sounds for it. So I was like, okay, I've never done this before, but I'll give it a try. So then I started putting sounds in and stuff. I started doing things that sounded right. And then leading up to the assessment, you can have one-on-one sessions with the lecturers. You book them in, so you can show them what you have so far, and they can tell you what they think about it to like push you in the right direction. So I worked really hard on it, and I brought it to Mate, and I was in his office, and I was like, okay, here, you know what I mean? Tell me what you think about this. And I was like very impressed with myself, because I'd never done this before, and it sounded good to me. I thought this was cool. So he puts it on, and then he's watching it. I think he gets like 15 seconds in, he just hits the space bar, he stops, and he's like, why did you put this sound in here? This one sounds like shit. He's like, I can't hear the other things. I don't understand what you're doing. This doesn't sound good to me. And I'm just sitting there, and I was just like, damn, like you're just going to tell me, and it wasn't like, I didn't feel like he was being mean to me or anything like that. But I just thought, wow, man, you really, you know what I mean? But that's how it is. Like sometimes people just, if they really think something like that, they have to tell you, you can't sugarcoat things. So then that was, a real rough introduction to like, this is the kind of feedback you're going to get. And it's not going to sound nice. But at the end of the day, this guy took time out of his day to listen to my work. So if you're not going to take it on board, or you're going to leave the meeting just feeling butthurt about stuff and not learning anything, then you're missing the point, really. So I took his advice on. I changed some things around, ended up getting a decent grade on that project. But yeah, it was good. And that was right in the beginning. So it was like, real wake up call to being like, okay, this is, got to develop thick skin. You got to be able to take things on without taking it personally. And it helped for the rest of the program, because every other assessment like that was just like, yeah, this is bad. You have to change that. I don't like this, but it's okay. But it's good though, because, you have to understand what other people think, because you can't walk into a situation being like, yeah, I know best. I know how everything works. I'm correct, because, you're only one person.
Yeah, I think that's its own kind of skill that is probably underappreciated for sure, is just being able to receive that critique and being able to actually interpret it in a way that you can change what you have to kind of appease somebody else's sense of what should be, or what is like better, or whatever this is. Like a lot of artists that I've definitely known a lot of artists that really don't want to compromise on their idea of good, but that doesn't always mesh with everybody else's kind of idea, and they're not really able to find any real success sometimes, because they can't seem to understand that they need like this back and forth. Like it's a communication thing that is, some people have and some people don't. Whenever they're really great performers in front of the audience, they deliver it in a certain way. They can tell the audience is not really buying it or doesn't feel it. So they change it a little bit, and then everybody loves it. And those are like the masters that can do that kind of thing on cue. Right? But we all kind of have to learn that, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you shared that. It is super critical that we can take criticism and then learn to work with it, right?
Yeah. And also it's like, if you're a freelancer too, and you're a freelancer, you're working for, you have clients, right? You're working for on other people's projects for money. If you're working on your own thing, great. You're your own boss. You can tell yourself off or pat yourself on the back for whatever it is you're doing. When I make my stories for sound fiction, if I like something, I like it. If I don't like it, then I change it, and that's up to me. But when you're working for somebody else, you have to your thoughts need to take a back seat to what they're telling you. So if they don't like something, you don't have to agree, but you have to change it if you want to keep them happy or make them, satisfied with the work. So yeah, being able to take on criticism and also analyze it to effectively give what, your clients or whoever you're working for, what they need. Yeah, it's a skill in itself. And that's, in all professions. It's not just, creative industries or audio or whatever. It's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we all got to deal with that. Let's talk about, you mentioned it a few times, and dropping the name Sound Fiction. I wonder if you could just help everybody. We'll share links, of course, in the notes, and so everybody can go out and find all of the work that you've done. But, what is Sound Fiction exactly for you? I know you talked about starting it for building your portfolio, but has it turned into something more? Just give us an idea.
Yeah, I mean, so I started it before I went into the program in 2022, and it originally started as like a practice experience for me, because I wanted to learn more about sound design. I wanted to learn more about things like vocal treatment and mixing, and how to make, immersive soundscape for storytelling. And these are all things that, we all watch movies, we listen to audiobooks, we watch YouTube videos, and we hear these things all the time, but making it is a totally different world. So I wanted to just, it started off as something for me to try to like self-educate on that. And it was really great experience. Going to school gave me the technical knowledge to make my productions better. And now it is kind of like, sort of like a portfolio, but it's also at the same time now it's sort of I don't know. It's just sort of like a passion project for me to like get, stories out there and get my, just a creative outlet for myself and to try to, push the boundaries of what I'm capable of, and I think it's important for everybody to sort of, if you're in a creative industry you should do some work for yourself because that's how you kind of keep your creative spark alive. If you're doing work for other people all the time, that's great. It's a job, it's a source of income. But if you're just kind of doing it heartlessly because you just want to, you just need to pay the bills and things like that, and you're not really thinking about things creatively anymore, the spark kind of dies. So for me, it's a sort of a creative engine to sort of keep my juices flowing, something for me to get motivated for, if I don't have work to do, I'll pour it into my stories. And it's good because it's taught me a lot about but just sound design in general. Exploring the medium more has been really, really fun for me because in the beginning I had all these very structured ideas of how it's supposed to be. But then as time has gone on, I sort of assumed that, maybe my structures would become more solid because I would understand more. But actually, it's become looser because it's all conceptual, So my stories now use a lot more sort of conceptual, sort of weird kind of sound design elements and things like that, ambiences, sound design sequences, just sort of things to try to make the story more interesting to me and hopefully to other people. But I mean, we'll see as time goes on. But yeah, no, it's really good. Started as an educational thing and it's turned into, a pretty deeply rooted passion of mine. So I do enjoy it for that.
Well, cool. Well, again, definitely we'll share some links so everybody can go check it out. I was hoping that since you've been doing this for a while now, I wondered if you could share some, like behind the scenes type of what's your process for creating these stories? Like, are you starting with a storyboard? Are you using like, I don't know, AI tools or like, how are you getting this thing started? And do you have clear stages that it goes through? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, the very first story that I made was called Hayden City Confessional. And it's about like a 1 hour long sort of noir detective story. And I thought it was cool or I got motivated to make it because I just thought the genre was cool. I just, you know what I mean? I don't know what I was watching at the time. I was just maybe watching some movies or, sort of this old hard boiled detective kind of stories. And I just thought the aesthetic was cool. And I thought, I could write a cool murder mystery with interesting characters and cool, world design around it. So then that's what I did. And then from there, each story that I post, whether it's like, a short, like a standalone, maybe 20, 30-minute thing or a multi-part, 40-minute, 1 hour kind of story, the thing that kind of keeps me in it or keeps me interested is that each one, it's totally up to me what I want it to be about, So there's, I can have some of the stories are like this sort of like, detective, crime kind of things. Other ones are like, supernatural horror, dystopian sci-fi. The range of genres is really broad. And I understand for people sometimes when they tune into a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever, they always want like a really specific thing. So if they tune into a podcast about horror stories, they always want horror, or they always want true crime, or they always want, a certain kind of thing. And I think maybe that makes my channel, my podcast, maybe a little bit more difficult to retain viewership, but it's important to me to be able to sort of work on whatever I want to work on because it just keeps it fun for me. I don't want to make the same kind of stories all the time. I don't want to make always horror stories and things like that. So each story, it's like an anthology series, If you check it out, you can kind of see it's always dark though. I guess that's the main theme is it's just kind of like dark fiction. But but I like it for that because it's fun for me. It's fun for me to, keep this creative spark going and stuff. And I guess you asked like, what's my process for making these stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, depending on kind of maybe whatever movies I'm watching or books I'm reading or sort of stories and things that I'm into, I kind of like naturally like to make up fiction in my head all the time anyway. So if I have an idea for a story, I'll just kind of start like formulating, building it up in my head, and I'll start putting it on paper and then starting to decide, okay, is this one going to be from the first person perspective from the main character? Or is this going to be like an ominous narrator, third person kind of thing? And then while I'm writing and thinking of the plot in my head, I'll start, listening to music on YouTube, certain maybe, dark ambient music kind of creators and things. And I just start like kind of visualizing what the story and the world is like in my head. And then after I finish writing, I'll record. I get into my little booth and I'll record. Or if there's other people on the story, then I'll record them. I'll put the voices together, and then I'll lay out pretty much the dialogue part of it, right? So I'll explain quickly. Like radio drama, audio drama production is a lot like movie, film sound. So there's three essential parts. There's dialogue, effects, and music, right? So dialogue is important because it's the backbone of the entire story. Without dialogue, you can have movies without dialogue, and I suppose you could have audio fiction without dialogue, but it's what kind of explains to the listener or the viewer, like, what's going on. You don't know what's going on without the words, right? So I'll do the words first. Then, depending on the scenes and what's happening, I'll lay the ambiances that you kind of have like the world around, and then you kind of like work your way in from there. So then you have, then you start bringing in like Foley noises, maybe start adding layers to the ambience to make things a little bit more direct. If there's a sequence going on, like, there's a fight or, someone stabbing someone, you need to sort of add those kind of sounds and things like that. And then if you want to, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, add some music into it to sort of like carry the mood and things. And then once that's all laid out, then the mixing process begins, because the mix itself can be a huge storytelling tool. You know what I mean? The levels of the music or the instrumentation or what you choose to put at like the forefront of each scene can really drive the emotion and really sort of like tell the listener what's going on or sort of how to feel. So yeah, that's sort of the basic process. But I guess, I don't know if I've done a pretty like all over the place job of explaining the process. But basically it's kind of, it's just fun because for me, it's kind of like whatever I want to do, then I make those stories. And then it kind of goes like, dialogues, effect, music.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, at the end there, it's nice to hear that. I was just going to say that at the end there, we definitely got like that process that we were talking about. But it's also nice to hear, like what your podcast, sound fiction is. And like, it's kind of all over the place, as you put it. But I think that's very interesting. I think I would, enjoy that kind of material, because that's kind of what I do from time to time. I'll jump from, some science book over to, some fiction book. And same thing with music and whatever I'm listening to usually. So it's right up my alley for sure. See, you talked about the process, kind of honing in, like going from large to big. Obviously, you need like a frame to work off of. So you're building the dialogue and the story first. But then once that's kind of set, you have that solid foundation, then you're working from like an ambience level, like a mood type level, into the more fine details of, like you said, like a Foley or Foley type of sounds that you're adding in, that are really like a hammer is coming down or something, that might be startling for somebody else. So that's really cool to hear your process. Do you feel like that what you do with your own project also applies to the other projects that you might work on with sound design?
Yeah, totally. And it's the same thing for film too. When you're doing sound design for a film and things like that, kind of the idea is you go broad brush strokes and then slowly more into fine tune ones, so you really need to, if you're building the whole world, the whole sonic world, you need to take really broad strokes that you cover everything. And then once you start getting down into the details and stuff, way more fine tune everything, And if I could explain one more thing about about sound fiction, I feel like I gave a pretty eccentric detail of my thought process behind it. But I guess my idea is that because people they like to tune into certain shows for very specific things, right? You like to listen to a true crime podcast because you like hearing about serial killers, or you like hearing about paranormal stuff, or you like horror fiction, or drama or comedy or whatever the case. People like to tune in for very specific things, but at the same time, all of our tastes can be very eccentric. You know what I mean? Like you said, you like all different kinds of genre of music and your mood changes from time to time. We don't all always like one thing. So I guess my thought process behind or the, the driving force behind my show is that even though every time it's a different thing, it could jump from like a crime drama to a sports story to a, whatever, to a science fiction story or whatever the case. I guess the constant among all of it is it's all very dark, you know what I mean? Very dark themes. A lot of horrible things are happening. People are dying, there's demons on, killers, all this kind of stuff. But the thing that I sort of pride myself on that I hope that people will tune in for is that when people listen to a few stories and they know that they like it, regardless of what your tastes are, you're tuning in because you know the production quality will be very good and the story will be captivating. So I guess sort of once you kind of get the idea of what my show is like, it doesn't really matter what your tastes are. When a new episode comes out, you want to listen to it because you know the story's going to be worth it, the plot's going to be interesting, and the production as a whole is going to be an experience. You know what I mean? You're just kind of taking the ride, no matter what it is, whether it's a sports story or a drama or this or that, That's my idea.
And, just because, we're talking about it here, is there one specific episode you would tend to point people toward, if they're just learning about you, like right now, like what would you suggest they start out, like right from your last episode that you released, or like you have like a really popular one?
I would say that there's a direct, you can tell quite quickly, like, so like I said, I was working on it for a year and a half before school. And then for the final major project of my program, I made a 5-part audio drama called Battlefield Lost, which is about an hour or, 55 minutes, an hour or so. It's a World War II drama, a little bit of science fiction in there. And it's just funny because, you can tell, and in the time between before I went to school and then up until I posted that one for my final project, there's a gap, so I didn't post for that whole year while I was in school pretty much. And you can just sort of tell when I started school and when I ended, because the production quality of the first beginning, the ones leading up to my program, the quality is like quite amateur. It's clearly somebody like just trying to figure it out. And then when I finished school, the quality is much better. So anything more recently, I would definitely suggest, because I feel more confident in my abilities and sort of what I've been doing since I finished school. But if I have to recommend one for people to listen to Battlefield Lost. Yeah, it's a 5-part series, but there is one episode that has all 5 of them in one on there. Check it out. I can't remember which episode number it is, but Battlefield Lost, that's a good one. And it's got a full cast too. It's starring me, my buddy Alistair Tuvey, and Jay Rolfe, playing 3 World War II soldiers who are not only separated from the battlefield, but separated from humanity altogether. They're traveling through war-torn Italy, but there's just no people around. They don't know where everyone's gone. So as they travel in search of people, they, start to figure out why they're in that situation in the first place. And it's a good listen. Highly recommend. And if you really are interested in the process behind it, go to the YouTube channel, and I made a video on it called The Making of Battlefield Lost, with sit-down interviews with myself, Alistair, and Jay, where we kind of explain the process of making the story and their sort of processes of, bringing the characters to life and everything. So Battlefield Lost, check that one out.
Nice. All right, cool. Let's do a couple of more things, Shaun, before we wrap up this episode. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, about, first off, you mentioned working with other artists. You had to record a live band, for instance, during your master's program. You also have other artists that you work with for voice acting in your own sound fiction productions. Do you have, any advice or, what are your experiences for how to communicate with people, how to get like the best performances out of people, just in general collaboration, because it's difficult working with some people sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, do you mean more so out of like how to meet people to work with, or the actual act of working with them?
I'm going to assume that, people have, like forums and, but, you got Upwork. You can actually go out and hire somebody like yourself off of Upwork to work with, right? But if you're actually having to, let's say, like manage that thing and communicate between those individuals, I guess, whether you're on the receiving end, or like kind of the management side where it's my project, like what are some best practices or maybe some, bad stories that you have about those experiences?
Well, I don't know. I can't really say, I don't really have too many horror stories myself because I haven't, I'm not always like working in studio and things like that. I mean, I don't have my own studio where I just have people come over to all the time. But I would say managing a session, whether you're, if you're a music producer, you have a band in there or a singer or what have you, managing a session is a completely different skill. That's like you know what I mean? That's about like just having good communication skills and making the people around you feel comfortable. When I was directing Alistair and Jay in Battlefield Lost, that was an interesting experience because I was acting with them in the studios. We were doing the reads together, but then at the same time, I was also kind of like engineering on the spot, like running the desk, like trying to really do everything as like a one-man show. But they were very easy to work with. Obviously, sometimes, not all people are. So I would just say when you work with people in person, it's just about having like good communication skills and just making it clear what you want. If you want people to change things, just give good, honest feedback without trying to come off like too, I don't know, like don't just say, just don't be a dick about anything. That's always a good starting point. So I think, yeah, when you collaborate with people and you work with them, yeah, it's just about like having good communication skills and making it very clear what you want. And if that's not clear, then sort of give people direction, like maybe try this, and this to try to like, sort of get there. But in terms of like collaborating with people, meeting them and just seeing who there is to work with, it's just about being active. You just got to be active, like jump on Reddit, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, whatever, be active in whatever communities that you're working in. I can say for a fact that the audio fiction and the audio drama community online is like really big. Didn't even know it existed until I started doing this stuff. And then now just going on there, interacting with people, it's quite involved. There's a lot of people out there making all kinds of really impressive things. And if not just jumping online and checking out online forums or whatever, go to conferences. Go to like, podcast conferences, music conferences, live recording conferences. There's a conference for like anything that you can think of. And a lot of the times they're huge. And you go there and you meet all kinds of people, and people are eager to meet you too. So it doesn't matter if you don't have a prestigious career or anything like that. You can always meet people who are interested in what you have to say or what you have going on as you are for them. So just being active in these communities, just going out, meeting people, interacting as much as you can. I think that's the best way to go about finding people to collaborate with.
Nice. And because I also like to kind of include a little bit of like, mental health is super important for everybody. So, how do you go about balancing your like work persona and, Shaun when he's silly with his fiance or whatever you're doing, by yourself? Do you like have a schedule for yourself that you follow or like some rules that, kind of keep you healthy?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's one of those kind of things that I'm sort of figuring out as I go, I've only been out of the program for 1 year. And I will say the mental health thing is when you do enter industry or when you are trying to start a new career or something like that, the mental health thing is very, very important because you kind of need to know what you need to do for yourself to stay sane. So, I mean, one thing that I'll say is that when I finished school, I said, okay, this is awesome. Now I'm out of school. I have all the time to work on what I want to work on. And I have this degree and I'm in London. So I'll be able to find a job and I'll be able to start working, And I knew like it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, here's this great salary job where, you're working on all these awesome projects and stuff. I sort of thought, well, you know what? I'll have to probably take an entry level position and, do all the jobs that other people don't want to do to work my way up. And it would be like that, but I started going out for jobs immediately after I graduated. And it was so difficult to just try and get a job, to try and get a work in a studio or get any kind of, get interviews and things like that. It was extremely difficult. And it played a big, it affected my mental health badly because I thought, man, I had all these ideas of what, graduate life would be like or industry life would be like. And it wasn't anything like what I thought. And at this point too, after a year into it, I still just keep an eye out for jobs and apply to things that I think sound interesting. But it's very, very difficult because London is extremely competitive, you know? So every single position that opens up, there's just so many people applying for, so many people that are so qualified going for like entry level positions and stuff. And fresh out of school, it was really difficult to sort of have a good mental health about things because I wanted to work, but I just couldn't. I felt I spent all my time trying to get jobs. I wasn't getting any. And it just made me feel like I was just wasting my time or I was failing or something. But, as time went on, so now instead of, like you said, it's just funny how one thing leads to another because I thought that I would be working in a studio or working on location somewhere or something like that. But through my efforts and everything, I have, been able to sort of just build up my freelancing career again. So now I'm doing a lot of voice work from home. Yeah, doing sound design for films and things like that, just having different kinds of audio clients. And now I'm in a place where it's like, okay, now I'm working. I can feel good about things. I have a little bit of room to relax. But how do you find that balance of like, when are you working too much? When do you need to take time for yourself? And I would say that, even though things didn't turn out the way, or things haven't turned out the way thus far, I thought they would, that like, I'm working from home and not in a studio somewhere or, doing these things that I thought I would be doing right out of school. It's still good because, you're still active. You're still doing things. Things are still coming from your efforts, And so now I'm in a place where, okay, now I am working and I do have to find this balance. And one of the big benefits from working from home is that, if you're an early bird, if you're an early riser, you wake up, do some work early in the morning, then you have the afternoon to just like hang out outside, go to the gym, go for a walk if you want to, come back, do a little more work. So I think the mental health thing for me, what I've found for myself in my current situation with freelancing from home is that if you have the energy to work, then work. And if you don't, just do something else, And I know that everybody doesn't have that flexibility because you might work at a physical job and all these sort of things. But when you just got to sort of listen to your mind, listen to your body. If you are just overworked and you can't do something, just don't do it, or try to explain to who you work with or your boss or whatever to just be like, look, I need this, this, and this to be happy. And I'll make up for it in these ways, or I'll handle my responsibilities in these other ways, And, that's what I find with my work, I have certain responsibilities and I take care of them. But if that means I need to just take an afternoon off or stop working at, a certain point in the day, then I'll just do that. So it's about sort of figuring out what balance works for you, I'd say.
Yeah. Definitely listening to your own your own body. It's going to let you know when you're sick and you're tired. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be, doing this thing right this moment. And, people kind of drive themselves into the ground from time to time. So definitely everybody keep an eye out for that type of stuff and help somebody if you see somebody in need, of course. Thanks so much for spending, this time with us and just sharing all your experiences that you've had, coming from that communications background and having an interesting experience teaching kids and then, falling in love with audio and then, later moving to London, meeting your fiance throughout this process and now having a great freelance career that you find sustainable for you, something that you're really passionate about and that you love doing also with your sound fiction, that people can all go check out all of those things. And of course, you look down in the show notes, we're definitely going to include all of those links to you, whether that's your Upwork profile, your own website, all of your sound fiction recordings that people can definitely dig into. Is there any last words that you want to leave our listeners with?
Last words I would say is that if you have a passion to try something new, whether it's like, you want to make music, you want to write, you want to make films, you want to do theater, acting, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just go for it. Just put in the work. I think, like you said earlier, the hardest part for a lot of people is just getting started. I think when you when you don't have experience in something and you want to go somewhere, but you're, so far from it, it's really easy to make mountains out of molehills. And, it just jumping out of the chair, jumping out the door, off the porch is the hardest part. But if you really do enjoy something, if you really are passionate about it, if you do it and you get off there and you start really putting in the work and everything, you'll start to see things start happening. Things will start to come your way. It might take a while, but if you are passionate about it, then, putting in the work will be worth it for you. And yeah, I will just say, like, things don't always turn out exactly how, you imagine, but when you work hard at something, things happen for you. So if you're thinking about doing something, stop thinking about it. Just do it. It's my advice.
All right. Let's take it from Nike at this point. But hey, again, thanks so much for spending the time. It's great to catch up with you and hear about your story. And I'm sure everybody will go and check out all of the things that you're putting out there right after this. So thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
After this conversation with Shaun Flynn, I truly feel inspired by his journey and the valuable insights he shared. Here are 3 takeaways that stood out to me. Number 1, pursue creative humility and willingness to learn. Shaun emphasizes the importance of approaching endeavors with humility and a willingness to learn, regardless of one's experience level. Actively seek opportunities for learning and growth, whether through formal education, online learning, or practical hands-on experiences. Number 2, actively seek and incorporate feedback. Remember the value of receiving and interpreting critiques when pursuing our endeavors. We can actively seek constructive feedback from mentors, peers, or clients to improve our work and adapt to meet the needs and expectations of our audience or industry. Number 3, prioritize mental health and work-life balance. Shaun openly discussed the impact of job search difficulties on his mental health and emphasized the importance of maintaining mental well-being as you pursue a new career or professional development. Whether you're a seasoned professional or amateur, prioritize your mental health and strive to achieve a healthy work-life balance in your pursuits. Thanks so much for tuning in and sticking to the end. This show is a labor of love, so please subscribe and share with friends and loved ones to show your support. Also, if you have feedback or ideas for future guests and episodes, send an email to dream@ideafield.pro with your ideas. That's dream@ideafield.pro. Join us next time for another captivating conversation on Field Talk. And as always, keep learning and growing while staying compassionate and creative.